I am more than a little excited to introduce and have a conversation and share this awesome man, Vince Roundtree, who is a health and wellness coach, a plant-based lifestyle coach, and my personal coach as of about a week ago. So he is, I'll put all his contact information in the comments. You're going to want to follow this guy. He is as passionate as he is knowledgeable, or as knowledgeable as he is passionate about all of these. And I've known about you for a while, Vince, and I was resistant to really make some changes. And before we get started with questions and so forth, you're a perfect expert, because choosing vibrancy is all about self-care. It's all about ways that we take responsibility for our health. And what better and more important thing? I mean, there's lots of things on the list of self-care. What we put in our bodies, what we eat is obviously top, top, top. So tell us, why is the way you teach, why is it so important? Tell us about that. I mean, you could probably talk 3 hours about that, and the crisis, the food crisis, and the obesity crisis, and the sick crisis in this country. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, I say in this country, we are crushed between two separate trillion-dollar industries.
Mm-hmm.
The food industry has one objective and one objective only, and that is to make food that is so pleasure producing that you'll buy more.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they care about. Everything you see in the grocery store, everything you see in your favorite restaurant, everything you see in a vending machine, everything you see at a fast food restaurant, everything you see in a convenience store is all set up to cause you to make this impulse decision based on pleasure. And it works. The marketing works. The smells, the aromas work. The sound, it all works. Unfortunately, any food that a company or man creates that takes us further away from the natural food that nature provided is going to have some ill effects. The foods that are the most healthy for your body are those that are closer to nature, foods that look like they did when they were grown. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, which is anything grown in the pod, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils, black-eyed peas, soybeans, edamame. When you're eating food that look like it did when it was grown, not only are you giving your body all the nutrients that it needs, but if you eat that way and you're not eating processed foods, by the way, oil is a highly processed food. Sugar is a highly processed food. That didn't look like it did when it was grown. Olive oil wasn't grown olive oil. It was grown olives, right? Eat the olives, don't eat the olive oil. When you eat foods that look like it did when it was grown, if you have weight to lose, you will lose it naturally. If you have chronic disease, you give your body a chance to heal itself. But you can't make too much money on broccoli and peaches. But if you take this stuff and you blend it and you put aromas in it and you put all these flavor enhancers in it and then you can make something that's like, oh my God. But what happens over time as you eat these foods that don't look at all like they did when they were grown, when you eat that, enough of that over a given period of time, most people will develop some type of chronic illness. And then that sends them to the doctor. And then the doctor now this is another multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Yep. Yep.
And that trillion-dollar industry doesn't ask you, what did you eat? No, they've got their own thing. They'll write you the prescriptions they give you. And most Americans are just crushed by the wills of these two massive industries.
Yeah. 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 The numbers that you've shown about, well, I mean, I've seen it in other, I don't know if you've covered it, but, the levels of obesity in this country. And then one of the things you did in a lecture that I heard you speak last week during the challenge, a lot of people have heard me talk about the challenge that I was undergoing, about the percentage of adults that have heart disease or I guess it's heart disease in this country. That blew my mind. So when you talk about people being crushed, you're not kidding. I mean, because, talk about willpower for a moment, because, that's what people typically take on, is they're going to have the will to resist the things that they love to eat, right? So that they can diet, so that they can lose a certain amount of weight. I mean, gosh knows, I've been there for a long time.
Willpower has a very short shelf life. It's got a short shelf life. You have to develop a bigger why. And until you develop and recognize and acknowledge and respect a bigger why, you'll always struggle. So the things that, to me, are most important with eating in a way that you will lose weight and improve your health that is sustainable is, number one, you've got to eat in a way where you're getting full on a regular basis. 95, 98% of all quote unquote diets fail. Why is that? Because most of them are based on cutting back on portion size in some degree. And when you cut back on your portion sizes, now you're hungry. Guess what? Your brain is designed for you not to starve. And here's the thing to understand. As a species, we've been on this planet for many, many, many years, right? Millions of years. And during the vast majority of that time, food has been scarce.
Right.
And so as our brain has gone through all of these evolutions, food has been scarce. So if you make yourself hungry, say, oh, I got to cut back on the willpower, what usually happens is, because now you're going against that nature brain of not wanting to starve, right? Food being scarce,
yeah,
most of our evolution. And so when you say, I'm going to cut back, I got to lose the weight, I got to get healthy. My doctor said, lose a few pounds, right? When that's your process, when that's your method, eventually you're walking through the mall, you have a dinner with your significant other or co-workers or whatever, and you smell your favorite food, and you're like, oh my God, I've got to have this. And you've been hungry all this time. And then you go to town, you feel great, then you feel horrible. And then the weight goes back and you say, screw it. Now I've already off the plan, and then you just eat all you want. And you're on this yo-yo. So it's not sustainable to depend on willpower. But what is sustainable, number one, is something where you can stay full. That's important. And then when you can link staying full with foods that taste good, that are then in alignment with a bigger why, now we've got something that's sustainable. Now we've got something that's sustainable. And that's what I coach, and in my partnership, that's what we coach, and it's highly effective. Highly effective. Most of my one-on-one clients and my group coaching clients, they make the change and they stick with the change, and they're really happy.
That's a big, powerful statement to say they stick with the change, because, the percentages of people that diet that fail, it's almost 100%. I think, I mean,
You're
if
right.
you really go on a diet, it's well over 80 in the 80s. 90% of people, go off of it. And I certainly have been a chronic dieter up until a few years ago when I stopped quote unquote dieting. But I know that, at times when I've been, on some sort of restrictive eating plan, I literally could get connected with feeling fear that I was hungry. And it's like, why do I fear that? That doesn't even make sense. I've got food in the house. It's not like I can't go, or I can go to the store, right? It goes back to my feelings of being hungry and not being able to eat because I was putting myself through some sort of a diet, process. And I just have these pent up emotions that come up. So it's been wonderful during this program to not. In fact, at one point, a couple of days ago, I was making this big plate. It was all veggies. And my husband said, "You're going to eat all that?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to eat all that until I'm full." Right. Like, back off.
That's right. And that is such a strange concept for most people, because all of our lives we've been taught, man, I got to lose some weight. I got to cut back, but it's not cut back. It is change what you eat. If you are snacking on fruits and vegetables, you can literally graze and, snack on fruits and vegetables all day if you want. Now, I definitely want you to have some starchy vegetables, some potatoes and beans and whole grains and brown rice, because that's what's going to make you full. But if you're snacking and you've got hummus and celery, or you want to snack on, apples and peaches and pears and plums and honeydew melons and, carrot sticks, and, you can snack on that stuff literally around the clock and still lose weight. And the reason why is because fruits and vegetables are primarily water.
Water, yeah.
They're primarily water. Potatoes too. Like, there's a lot of people that think, oh, you gotta watch those carbs, right? Oh, the carbs will kill you. What about the carbs? Carbs aren't the problem. Refined carbs, like breads and cookies and candies and cakes, those are refined carbs. But beans and potatoes and oatmeal and brown rice and quinoa and carrots and beets and tomatoes, those are loaded with carbs. Unrefined carbs, perfectly fine. So there's so many, it's funny to see people that feel like, oh my God, I can't have too many apples, there's sugar in there.
Right.
It's hilarious. Don't eat too much of that cantaloupe, there's sugar in there, and to the thought of the fact that someone would equate a refined sugar that you'll find in cotton candy or in a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola, right? Or in Twizzlers or Skittles, or you're taking that, or candy bar, right? You're taking that highly refined sugar with zero nutrient value, zero, no fiber, no minerals, no vitamins, zero nutrient value in a refined sugar, and compare that to, say, a cantaloupe that's got fiber, that's got carbohydrate, that's got protein, that's got fat, that's got phytonutrients, that's got a lot of water in it, it's literally a symphony of nutrients. And
the body knows what to do with
it. That will slow down the absorption of that natural sugar.
Right.
And you cannot put that in the same category as a refined candy bar sugar, right? But people will do it all the time and say, you gotta avoid the sugar. Don't eat too much watermelon, it's got sugar in it. You know what?
Yeah.
I'll stick with my plan. I'm doing all right.
The body is so wise. I don't think we give the credit to the body. The body knows what's natural and what, it knows what to do with natural food. So it's not all the chemicals. It's one of the things I want you to tell a story, but one of the things I've gotten back to doing is looking at ingredients. And just because it's a vegetable doesn't mean it doesn't have added sugar if it's frozen in the grocery store. So, you know, this morning I was making my smoothie, which is absolutely delicious that I'm drinking right now. And I went, you know, in the middle of it, and I went and flipped the bag over to be sure there wasn't any, because it was frozen pineapple and frozen mango. Love it when it says, you know, ingredients, mango. That's it. End of story, you know?
That's it. That is always the goal. It is so important to look at the ingredients list. Ignore the front of every package for nutrient information. I don't care what you're buying. The only thing you get from the front of the package is, okay, I need X. So the front of the package tells me X. For nutrition information, turn it on the back. Number one, look at the ingredients. If all of the ingredients are the whole foods you're looking for, you can stop right there.
Yeah.
But if not, then we can look at the nutrition label, and there's some things we can glean from that. But looking at those ingredients is by far, and for frozen fruits and frozen vegetables, that one is crystal clear. The package should just have the vegetables or just have the fruits that you're intending to buy. And that's not always the case, as you found out. You know, you could have frozen fruits packed in syrup or whatever, and you absolutely don't want that.
Right. So I want to stop you with what we're talking about right now for a moment, because I want you to share a story. So I know you've got many that are near and dear to your heart. One of these days, it's going to be my story. Share a story of someone that was, you know, really struggling, and how this new eating plan has worked for them.
Yeah. Oh boy, there's so many to pull from. There's a woman that came to me a while ago who was a type 2 diabetic, and she was giving herself, having to give herself insulin shots every day, and she hated it. She absolutely hated it. And she was looking for, and she said, I'll do whatever you say, but I need to get off of this insulin. And so she hired me, and we worked together one-on-one. And of course, we switched her to plant-based nutrition. And that was a help, but that didn't get her all the way there. So there's a lot of other things that you can do. So you know, diabetes is caused by insulin resistance, right? And so kind of the short story is, when you eat a carbohydrate, it converts over to glucose. Glucose builds up in the bloodstream because it really wants to get into the muscle cells, right? Glucose is the fuel that your body uses for energy. The mitochondria burns glucose in it for energy, but that mitochondria is inside the muscle cell. So you eat a carbohydrate, converts to glucose. Glucose starts building up in the bloodstream until they can jump into that muscle cell. And insulin is the key that unlocks the door that allows that glucose to get in. So when you've got type 2 diabetes, it's like the key doesn't work anymore. Your pancreas is making the insulin, and it's trying to unlock the door to let glucose jump in, but it can't get in. So since the glucose can't get in the muscle cell, what does it do? It keeps building up in the bloodstream, wreaking havoc on the rest of your body. So for somebody that has type 2 diabetes, the reason why that glucose can't get in, the reason why the insulin key is not effective in opening the door and letting that glucose jump in, is because the cell is already full of fat. Now, let me be clear. You can be very skinny and this can happen, because I'm talking about fat that is inside of the muscle cell.
Right.
So if you stop eating and saturated fat is a gazillion times worse. So if you stop eating all animal-based foods and refined oils, then you give your cells time for that fat to drain out. And if that fat drains out, now your insulin will be able to open the door and glucose can get in. So that's the way it works. And so with this woman that was giving herself insulin injections, we had to do everything in order to increase her insulin sensitivity. So exercise is really important to increase your insulin sensitivity. Intermittent fasting helps with insulin sensitivity, meaning if you can, at the worst, eat in a 12-hour span. I'd like for you to eat in an 8-hour span, right? So if you eat for an 8-hour span and what's the difference? 16 hours you're not eating, that will improve your insulin sensitivity. Exercise will improve your insulin sensitivity. Getting proper sleep. And so everything kind of is a cumulative effect. And everything that I was recommending, she did. And she still wasn't quite getting there. And then I asked her, when was the last time that you took an antibiotic? She said, oh, well, I just got off an antibiotic because she had had this surgery on her ankle for something different. And when she went back, the doctor said, you still have something, put her on more antibiotic. I said, that's what we need. Because in order to get your insulin sensitivity to be as strong as possible, the microbiome, the bacteria in your gut has to make these things called short chain fatty acids. And in order for that to happen, you've got to have the right gut bacteria. And if you were on an antibiotic, which by the way, if you've got an infection, you need an antibiotic, take an antibiotic, right? It can save your life. I'm not saying don't do this. But antibiotics just indiscriminately kill bacteria.
Right.
Good bacteria, bad bacteria, it kills bacteria. And that was a problem. So we got her on this regimen to rebuild her gut bacteria, get the exercise in, get plenty of sleep, have unprocessed plant-based foods. And today she is on 0 insulin, 0 metformin, 0 cholesterol drugs, no drugs whatsoever. Glucose levels perfectly under control. Cholesterol is perfectly under control. Blood pressure perfectly under control. And she is ecstatic.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's often not one thing. And I'm glad you brought up sleep, because I talk a lot about sleep. Sleep is the only time our bodies are, do 95% of the healing and recovery. And so you can be eating all the right foods, and if you're not getting sleep, your body doesn't have the chance to turn off the fight or flight response, and to the hormones to do what they're supposed to do and not be on this, alert readiness, so that you can process what you need to process and the body can heal. So Sleep is super important. Water is super important.
Exactly.
Being well hydrated is super important. As I sit here, I came into my office and I've got 2 glasses from yesterday. I guess I didn't drink enough water. I didn't finish my water yesterday. I'm like, well, there you go. 3 glasses of water.
It's really important. The body needs everything, right? Eating plant-based is important. As you said, the sleep is important. Getting some exercise is important. Managing your stress and having loving relationships is important. Obviously, any kind of substance abuse is important, and it all plays together.
Yeah, it's all synergistic. Absolutely.
Right.
So, and I love, you had a tagline when I first heard you speak, when we first met, that speaks to all of this. And it was so powerful that, I don't know, it's been 2 or 3 years now that I remember that. And I don't think I've heard you say it recently. If food is the cause, and then food is the cure. Food is the cure. So that's a powerful statement.
And there is documented proof today. We live in a country where we spend over $3.5 trillion on healthcare. I don't know if most people realize how big $1 trillion. If you ask the average person how many zeros are in $1 trillion, you gotta do some. It's a ridiculously large
number. It's a ridiculous number.
Just on healthcare, what the United States spends on healthcare is more than the GDP from every nation in the world except the top 5.
Well, and the reason it's so big is because it's not healthcare. If it was truly healthcare, it would not be so big. It's because it's
you are
sick
so
care.
right.
Managing people being sick is so much more expensive than the dollars. People say that it does cost a lot of money to eat well, to buy organics, to eat good food, non-processed food, whole food. In the up front, it's more expensive. In the back, it's so much cheaper.
And I would even question up front. I don't know if you were on the call.
You're right. Yeah,
when the woman talked about the seafood.
you're right. Absolutely. Yeah. It
She,
depends on what you buy. If you're
yeah,
buying lots of meats and seafoods and expensive cheeses, then
she
it's okay.
she said her grocery bill dropped significantly. She said,
Yeah.
"Oh, because I didn't buy this seafood, I didn't buy that seafood."
Right.
She said, "But and I'm realizing that not only am I saving that money, plus I'm improving my health at the same time."
Right.
Right? So it doesn't have to be expensive. But where I was going with this $3.5 trillion healthcare spend, sick care spend, is that 80%, 80% of what we spend in that industry could be eliminated based
Yep.
on lifestyle
Lifestyle.
changes.
Yep.
If we ate plant-based, if we don't smoke, if we're getting rest and we're getting some exercise, we're managing stress, literally 80% of that healthcare spend would go away
Right.
if we just live a better lifestyle. And unfortunately, doctors don't know how to instruct you on the lifestyle. What they do know how to do is write you the prescription.
Yeah.
The problem.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's, I learned this many years ago that in Asian countries, Japan in particular, they spend 90% of every dollar on health is spent on prevention, only 10% on intervention. And in the US, I don't know, I haven't looked at the numbers recently. I'm guessing it hasn't changed. It maybe it's gotten worse, that we spend 90% on intervention, oftentimes the last, months or year of someone's life, and we only spend 10% on prevention. So those numbers have to change. If
Yeah.
and I'm writing an article right now about if there's anything we've learned from being in a pandemic and watching people that, relatively young. You hear stories of somebody that's young that either got a really bad case that struggled with COVID, or perhaps, lost their life. And it's, why is that? And it's all these things that we've been talking about, that it's about, I liken our, what we do for our health as the same as our bank account. If we're making daily deposits into our wellness bank account, then we have reserves. No different from our bank account. We know if we put deposits in, if you have a savings account and every time you get paid, you put a little bit in savings, a little bit in savings, then you have the classic rainy day, things come up that we didn't plan on, right? But you've got an account there so you can pull from the reserves financially. It's no different from our health. And so, what we're talking about is, from a preventative standpoint, is when we can deposit, good nutrition, good sleep, good water, positive, positivity, all of those things on a daily basis, something, we've got those reserves so that when things come up like a pandemic or, anything, God forbid, we get a diagnosis of cancer, we're always exposed to carcinogens. I mean, in our environment, we live around carcinogens. As little, as much as we can detox our home, that's important, but we don't live in a bubble. So we're exposed to that all the time. And so our immune system is designed to fight all of this. And we give it a much more of a fighting chance when we're not constantly overloading our system with toxicity and toxic food. Tell the story, because you started this and I stopped you because we hadn't started recording. But tell the story that was a study with rats and what they found out, because I thought that sounded like an amazing awareness.
Yeah. So if we look at the animal kingdom and you look at all animals in nature, you don't see any animals in their natural environment that are obese.
Mm-hmm.
The system works out so that they're able to get the nutrients that they need and they don't grow. There's 3 species that get obese: people, cats, and dogs. Right?
Yeah.
The cats and dogs because the people feed them.
Yep.
And the reason why is a concept that you know very well now after having gone through the challenge, but some people may not know, is a concept called calorie density. Well, what is calorie density? Now, this is a lot easier to show on a chart than it is to explain, but I'll try to give some examples. Calorie density is the number of calories in a pound of food. And it ranges from 0. Water has 0 calories, but it has mass. And the item that's got the most, that's the most calorie dense, is 100% fat. And oil is 100% fat. That's got 4,000 calories per pound, right? That's the highest. Water is 0. Vegetables are around 100 to 200-300. Fruits are around 200-300. Whole grains around 500. Beans around 500-600. Then you get into meats that are around 800 or so. Hamburgers around 1,200. Breads around 1,300-1,400. Cheeses up around, I think, 1,900, 2,000. And so within that range, the more processed your food is, the higher the calorie density is. And whether or not you are overweight or not is a factor of 2 things. 1, there is a genetic component.
Yeah.
And 2, what is the average calorie density of the food that you eat? And there was a study done on mice, where they fed mice what mice normally eat, and none of the mice were overweight. They were what mice should weigh.
Right.
Then they fed them some concoction of like chocolate on bread or something like that, and fed them that, and just watched in a matter of a week their weight get, in a matter of a couple of weeks they were 50% fat. You just literally watched them gain the weight. Why? Because they were eating foods of a calorie density that their body really shouldn't take in. And when they tried to switch them back to the regular food, and they just put the regular food in and took the chocolate concoction away, you know what happened? They didn't eat. They were waiting for that pleasure that hit their brain. And they went days and days, and they were like, when are you gonna put that? That is exactly what we are experiencing. We are so exposed to this hyper pleasurable food that lights up all kinds of pleasure sensors in our brain that we've just gotta have it. It produces enough pleasure where it's like, oh my God, I've gotta have that again. And it's of a very high level of calorie density. If I could get you to eat foods that look like they did when they were grown, before we manipulated them to give you all this extra pleasure, the body just naturally. And you saw this for yourself, Sherry, and all of the people in the group, right?
Yeah.
Everyone that did it, their weight just dropped. Their weight just dropped,
yeah.
And they're never hungry. It happens with all animals. If you're eating foods that are in the range of calorie density that your body naturally should be eating, which for us is plant-based foods. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. When you eat that, everything just, your weight gets in line, your blood pressure naturally drops. We had a lady in the group whose blood pressure dropped so much, the doctor having to take her off blood pressure pills. Amazing. She was on blood pressure pills for 20 years.
Yeah.
And in 5 days, she's like, her blood pressure went down like 90 something over 60 something. You talk to your doctor and let your doctor get you off these pills. Right? It's just incredible. Cholesterol just drops, and blood pressure drops, and glucose levels, if you've got diabetes, drops, and it's an amazing thing.
Well, I want to wrap this up with telling my own personal story, and that I have carried extra weight for most of my adult life. I have been up and down. I remember I had a success. Goodness, it's been 8 years ago or something like that on Weight Watchers. And I had gotten to a point, I had dropped most of my weight. I was about 2/3 there or 3/4 there, and then hit Thanksgiving and then, all of that. And, I've said it at times, I used to be in the food business. My family had a restaurant. I love to cook. I'm a great cook. I'm a vegetarian, so I've been, people all my life have said, I thought vegetarians are supposed to be skinny. It's like slap, so you
Slap.
it's slap. You can certainly eat plenty of bread and butter and cheeses and all of that, right? So I have struggled with it, and because I love to cook and there's so much joy, and for me, that's one of the ways I show my love for people, my family, is to cook. And I've cooked a very calorie dense kind of diet, and so I had a lot of resistance. And basically what's going on for me is my father died at 67. I'm 62. 67. He was overweight his whole life. I mean, literally, I never knew him not to be. He had just dropped 50 pounds months before he died, and he had a heart episode that took him out at 67. So, the reality is kind of smacking me in the face, and I have a low thyroid, so I'm on a thyroid medicine. And the last time I had labs done, they weren't so good. They were getting borderline high for, perhaps needing, diabetic, pre-diabetic. And my is it the HDL, my cholesterol, the bad cholesterol was really borderline high. And so it was kind of like said to me, if these don't change, and there's just no way I'm going to go on medication. I'm a wellness consultant. I know too darn much. And so this was kind of like, so I've got 90 days, I'm less than 90 days away from getting my labs done. And by George, I can't wait. Now I'm looking forward. I was dreading it, and now I can't wait because I joined your program. And I have some of my family that are vegans. They're very excited that the cook of the family is. In fact, I've already told them they're coming over Friday night. I'm making the veggie lasagna. I'm like, they're so excited because they're going to get to eat better because of me cooking more. And, Thanksgiving is going to be a very different Thanksgiving this year. So, I'm claiming my health back. I have always been told, I've been healthy. I've had lots of energy. I have 2 older brothers who have had to be on some medication. I've never had a blood pressure issue. My heart is great. I've exercised most of my life. So I've done a lot of things right. And yet I've carried all this extra weight. So it's time to face the truth. And I can't thank you enough, because it's been, what has it been, 10 days or so since I started working with you. It was a week ago Sunday.
Yep.
I'm down 5 pounds. I'm not hungry. And, I'm excited about learning more and more about how to eat in ways that is sustainable, that's delicious. It's got to be delicious. I'm not going to, I won't make it if it's not. Yeah. I have too much conditioning of wanting food to be delicious. So yes, it's going to be a process, and I've been on I've been studying the whole thing of mindfulness and paying attention to not eating mindlessly, because I would certainly do that. To really pay attention to your food, to really pay attention when you feel satisfied. I'm finding myself, even with a plate of vegetables and some potatoes, all unrefined foods, it's like I'm full, I push it away. It's like I don't finish it. I may come back and eat 2 hours later and finish it, because then I'm hungry, So anyhow, I can't thank you enough. You're an amazing teacher. And as I said, as knowledgeable as you are passionate, it's a great combination. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and a pleasure to watch you get it, and to watch you improve, and to see that smile hit your face, because you've lost 5 pounds in 10 days and you've never been hungry. That's a beautiful thing.
That's a pretty good thing to say.
Yeah.